As I said, what matters most to us is how the elections were conducted and affected the outcomes. In 1920, elections for local governments in Northern Ireland were conducted using something called a proportional representation formula. This allowed Catholic parties to win 3 key local elections. Now, it's not surprising that they win at least some elections. This little map here kind of shows us the Protestant Catholic breakdown in Northern Ireland. So we do have in most of these areas, it is majority Protestant. But in at least a third of the area of Northern Ireland, Catholics are a majority. So they should be winning somewhere. But it seems they won 3 important elections the Protestants didn't want them to win. We haven't talked about political parties before. I need to make sure we all know what a political party is, because it's not the fun kind of party. Political parties are groups of people, usually groups of people who share the same ideas. When you're taught about this in government class, it will be taught to you as groups of people who share the same ideas. In a lot of cases, they actually don't. What all parties do have in common is that they are groups of people that want to control the government. They may not agree on much else, but they do want to control the government. That sounds kind of sinister, but if we're talking about a democracy, that just means they want to control the government by winning elections. Winning elections means you have to win the votes. What it takes to win the votes depends on your voting formula. So let's look at how proportional representation works. Basically, it works as the number of seats you get in the government, or who gets to be president, is based on the percentage of the vote won. We're going to simulate this by pretending to buy 10 pizzas. So if some students in the past, like the first time I did this, thought I was actually going to buy 10 pizzas, I'm not buying 10 pizzas. But imagine that we were going to buy 10 pizzas and vote for the pizza you want. There's no write-ins. You have to pick one of those choices. We're going to take 15 seconds out of that 30-second time for you guys to finish making your choices. Okay. You've made this interesting. A little bit more challenging, if that's okay. All right, so we have 18 votes. It's going to make me do math. All right, so we've got several votes for 2. Okay, and we've got 11. Okay, so we've got not 112, but 11 divided by 20, or nope, divided by 18. Okay, we are getting 6 pepperoni pizzas. Bree, will you keep track of this for me somewhere in the margins of your notes? 6 pepperoni pizzas. And then so 6 pepperoni pizzas, yeah? All right, 1 cheese, 1 hamburger, and 1 supreme. So that brings us to 9 pizzas. Actually, we're also going to get that Canadian bacon. So 1 Canadian bacon. Sometimes proportional representation works out that way, where even like the fringe option, no offense to Canadian bacon person, I don't mean fringe in a bad way, but you're kind of all alone, right? Even very small groups can get representation in government under proportional representation. Now, in your notes, let's talk about our results. The bottom of page 37. Oops, not 37. 36. Okay. You need to write down the pizza you voted for. I can't tell you what that is because I don't know. I also can't tell you how many of the pizzas selected were the type you voted for. I can tell you that that number is either 6 or 1. And so if you picked Canadian bacon, it's 1. If you picked pepperoni, it's 6. For example. And then we need to answer this question. Were most students able to get at least some of the pizza they wanted? What do we say, Sierra? Did most people get what they wanted? Yeah, everybody got some of what they wanted. I don't think it's ever worked out that cleanly in any of my classes. I'm glad I'm recording this one because this one worked out perfectly. Everybody got some of what they wanted. And that is how the Catholics managed to win those 3 important elections that the Protestants didn't want them to win. In 1924, it's a different story. In 1924, the Protestants have rigged the game. They have done something called gerrymandering. And if you're like, oh, leave it to the Irish to come up with some crazy, weird verb that sounds like that, can't blame it on them. This comes from America. Gerrymandering is an American invention. It's named for Elbridge Gerry, or Gary, depending on who you ask. He was the governor of Massachusetts, and he helped make sure that districts in that state were drawn to advantage his political party. That's what gerrymandering means. Now, how did we get to gerrymander? Well, somebody compared the shape of his districts to salamanders, right, when you put them all together. And so it became known as Elbridge Gerry's salamander, which eventually just became known as gerrymander. Student in second hour asked if gerrymandering still exists. Yes, it exists in your very own state. Even better, it exists in the congressional district you currently live in. And if you look at a map of how congressional districts are drawn, Sam Graves, your congressman, has a super safe seat because he is gerrymandered to have to face very little competition from the other party. In this case, gerrymandering favored the Protestants, not a surprise. But to make things extra safe for the Protestants, they switched the voting formula to something called first past the post. It has other more formal names, but first past the post is the one that we're going to use because it's the best one for us. Now, first past the post is a racing analogy. And the idea here is if Justin and Isaiah are in a foot race, whichever one passes the finish line post first is the winner. It doesn't matter if Isaiah beats Justin by 5 feet or 55 feet. He is the winner. As a result of this, the Protestant Unionists get control of more than roughly 6 out of every 7 local governments in 1924. Yes, Isaiah. Make sure it's set for 5 minutes. If you have a phone, leave it in the box. In 1920, they had won 49 out of 73. Both of those are big wins, but this one is much more of a dominant win, that 1924. So how does this first past the post or FPTP work? So representation is won by whoever gets the plurality. Plurality is not just a different way of saying majority. Plurality means that you got more votes than any other party. It does not mean majority. Majority means you have to have gotten more than 50% of the vote. Right? Not much more than 50, but you have to get at least 50% of the vote plus one more voter. Right, so tell me again which kind of pizza you wanted in the Pear Deck. It'll take 15 more seconds for you guys to finish your voting. Got almost all of you in there. Some of you have had changes of heart, which makes this work less cleanly as an example, but that's okay. Democracy's messy and people change their minds. All right. Well, this time, I don't have to have a calculator, and I don't need Bree to take my notes in the margins. Okay. We are buying 10 pepperoni pizzas. That's it. Nothing else. So in your notes, now that we're moving on, this time we are at the bottom, or actually, I guess, no, top, middle, where, yeah, middle of page 38 in your notebooks. Okay. What pizza did you vote for? Again, I can't tell you that. You know which pizza you voted for. How many of the 10 pizzas selected were the type you voted for? Your answer is either going to be 10 or 0. Right? If you voted for pepperoni, they're all for you. If you voted for something else, you got 0. Were most students able to get at least some of the pizza they wanted? What do we say? Silas, did most people get some of the pizza they wanted? 11 out of 18 of you voted for pepperoni. So, did a majority of people get what they wanted? Yeah. But, now, the flip side is you guys changing your minds. You need to add a little bit extra in here. In your case, it's going to be yes, but, and now I guess I do have to get the calculator out. 7 divided by 18. Okay. 39%. You guys need to add that. Right? 39% got none of what they wanted. So you guys played perfectly into the first half of my pizza simulation teaching moment. This half, not as cleanly. Usually the way it works out is that only a minority of students get what they actually wanted. If you guys had voted the same as you did for the first vote, everybody get this written down before I take it away. I don't want that to go to the print shop next year when I'm asked them to make the notebooks again. All right, good? Okay. If you guys had voted the same, what was it, Bree? No, you don't have that number. What was it? So if it was, all right, you guys are going to make me do reverse math now. All right, 0.61. I see. This was all a conspiracy. All right, times 18. Okay. I guess you guys were pretty consistent on that one, at least. All right. Never mind. You guys. All right. You win that round, kids. Students 1, teacher 0. All right. Don't worry. I'll take it out on you by making your exit slip twice as long and give you half as much time. I think that sounds fair. Right, Kylie? Totally fair. All right. At least you're going to learn one lesson today, kids. All right. Okay. And again, this is to rig the game. This is not an accident. The first Prime Minister of Northern Ireland. And Prime Minister is kind of like a president, but kind of not. But the closest thing that we have to compare it to in the U.S. would be the president. And he brags about this. He says, all I boast is that we are a Protestant parliament and a Protestant state. And when he says parliament is like our Congress. It's the legislature. It is the branch of government that makes all the laws. And so, of course, from this, we conclude that the government is dominated by Protestants. And it uses its power to discriminate against Catholics. For example, if Dion is a Catholic living in Northern Ireland and he would like a job as a firefighter, it's a government job. Probably a pretty good government job. It pays well. You don't have to worry about getting fired. That kind of job is not going to go to Dion. Right? It's going to go to a Protestant. Right? The government is going to give those to its own group unless it absolutely has to give it to a Catholic. That's not going to happen very often. Same thing with public housing. And in the United Kingdom, lots and lots of people live in public housing. It's a very common thing. They're called council houses, and lots of people live in them. It's less expensive than private housing. Oftentimes, it's still pretty good housing, so lots of people want it. There will be waiting lists to get into public housing. If Jaden is a Catholic living in Northern Ireland, Jaden, you're going to be on that waiting list for forever, most likely, because Protestants are the ones who are going to get into that more affordable housing. You will be stuck paying more for perhaps worse housing somewhere else. They also persecuted Catholics. For example, if Vita is suspected of supporting the Irish Republican Army. This isn't saying that like Vita is blowing up cars, carrying guns. If Vita is suspected of supporting the Irish Republican Army, he can be arrested and held in jail for a long time. And they can beat him. Right? That's the flogging part. Right? They can whip Vita while he's being held in jail for this very long time without ever being charged with a crime. You can't do that in the United States. It's written into our laws. In fact, it's in our Constitution. That was kind of a big deal with habeas corpus and stuff during the Civil War. You have to either charge someone with a crime or let them go. But not in Northern Ireland. Sorry, Vita. And it's tough. It's tough sometimes. And if Vita thinks, this is awful, I think we should get together and tell the government that we want this to stop. Well, you can't do that either. Because if you try to form a nationalist political party or even hold public meetings as a Catholic, you can't do that. That's illegal too. And that will bring us to what's called the Troubles. But we will pick up with that tomorrow. For right now, I want you to wrap up your notes. Matter of fact, I'll go back to that last slide for anybody who needs something from there. Please head back to the module, find today's exit slip. It is the same questions as the Do Now, same 8-minute time limit. Same pages 20 to 23 in your notebooks.